Hello, everyone. Welcome to Celsius 233, your go-to place for fiction book summaries. Today, we will immerse ourselves in The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, first published in 1915, is one of the most iconic works of existentialist and surrealist fiction. It tells the story of Gregor Samsa, a traveling salesman who wakes up one morning to find himself inexplicably transformed into a gigantic insect-like creature. This novella explores themes of alienation, guilt, identity, and the absurdity of human existence, reflecting Kafka's distinct Kafkaesque style. Plot summary. One morning, as Gregor Samsa awoke from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed into a monstrous insect. His body, now covered in a hard shell and equipped with numerous legs that fluttered helplessly before his eyes, was unrecognizable. Lying on his back in his small room, Gregor initially believed it was a dream. But as he tried to move and found himself unable to roll over or control his limbs, the terrible reality sank in. His thoughts quickly turned to his job as a traveling salesman. His family depended on his income, and he had planned to leave for work that very morning. Panic set in as he realized he had overslept, and soon, his boss's assistant would arrive to check on him. Gregor's family, unaware of his transformation, began knocking on his door. His mother and sister, Gret, expressed concern when they heard him still in his room so late in the morning. His father, more forcefully, demanded an explanation. Gregor tried to respond, but his voice was now distorted into a high-pitched squeak, alien and unsettling. The family couldn't understand his words. As he struggled to get out of bed, there was a knock at the door. His boss's assistant had indeed come to find out why Gregor hadn't shown up for work. With great effort, Gregor managed to roll off the bed and open the door using his newly formed insect limbs. The sight of him immediately caused shock and horror. His mother fainted, his father was horrified, and the assistant fled the apartment, too stunned to believe what he had seen. Gregor, in his new form, was unable to explain himself or reassure his family. His father, furious and disgusted, forced him back into his room, driving him with a stick and a newspaper until Gregor, wounded and bleeding, retreated to the confines of his space. Over the following days, Gregor's life took a miserable turn. His family, who had once depended on him, now viewed him as a burden. They avoided entering his room unless absolutely necessary, leaving him isolated and unable to communicate. His sister, Gret, took it upon herself to feed him, though she did so with a mixture of pity and revulsion. At first, she brought him milk, his favorite drink, but Gregor found it repulsive in his new state. As time passed, she began bringing him scraps of rotting food, which Gregor devoured with an appetite he barely understood. Gregor's family, struggling financially without his income, began making sacrifices. His father, who had previously been too old and weak to work, took up a job as a bank messenger. His mother sewed clothes for neighbors, and Gret, once a carefree girl, began working as a shop assistant. The family grew resentful of Gregor's presence, and the love they had once shown him faded into a sense of duty and shame. Gregor, unable to communicate or contribute, became acutely aware of how much of a burden he had become. His room, once filled with furniture and personal belongings, was gradually emptied by Gret and their mother, who thought it would give him more space to move around. The process left Gregor feeling increasingly detached from his human past. One day, as Gret and her mother attempted to move the last piece of furniture out of Gregor's room, his mother caught sight of him clinging to a picture on the wall in a desperate attempt to preserve something from his former life. Horrified, she fainted. In the ensuing chaos, Gregor's father returned home and, misunderstanding the situation, assumed Gregor had attacked his mother. In a fit of rage, he hurled apples at Gregor, one of which lodged painfully in his back, leaving a deep wound that never fully healed. As time passed, Gregor's family grew increasingly indifferent toward him. His presence in the household became an unspoken shame, and they kept his door closed, interacting with him only when absolutely necessary. Even Gret, who had been the most sympathetic, began to grow tired of caring for him. The family took in boarders to make ends meet, and Gregor was confined to his room even more strictly to avoid disturbing them. One evening, however, as Gret played her violin for the boarders, Gregor, drawn to the music, crawled out of his room. His appearance horrified the boarders, who demanded to leave immediately without paying rent. This event became the breaking point for the family. Gret, once his closest ally, declared that they could no longer tolerate Gregor's existence. She insisted that the creature in the room was no longer her brother, and the family would be better off without him. Gregor, hearing this, retreated to his room, overcome with sorrow and guilt. His body, weakened by the lack of food and the infection from the wound in his back, gave out. Alone in the darkness, Gregor took his final breath, succumbing to the physical and emotional toll of his transformation. The next morning, when the family discovered Gregor's lifeless body, they felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The father, once so aggressive toward Gregor, gently pushed his body out of the room with a broom. The family, now free from the burden of Gregor's existence, decided to leave their apartment and start anew. They took a leisurely walk in the countryside, discussing their future plans. Gret, in particular, seemed to blossom in this new chapter of their lives. The parents realized she had grown into a young woman, full of potential, and began making plans for her future. The weight of Gregor's existence had lifted, and they felt hopeful for the first time in a long while. This was just one story. Franz Kafka has plenty more for you to discover. Check them out in the description or on Celsius 233. Remember, while our summaries capture the essence, they can never replace the full experience of reading the book. If this summary intrigued you, consider diving into the complete story, buy the book, and immerse yourself in Franz Kafka's original work. Bye-bye, take care, have fun.